Mark.
Thank you, James.
Morning. Thank you very much for joining me today. Very special episode of the Authenticity Hour, because this is episode 4, which is pretty wild that it's actually gone on this long. Part of me thought this would get shut down already, this rinky-dink outfit we've got going on. And it's a very special episode because I'm joined by Mark Freeman, who has 10 plus years in the world of, I'll use the word eco for our next talking point, eco-friendly / renewable / carbon negative experience in that world. So I'd love to know a little bit more about what you do, Mark, because I think there's a few misconceptions about the world of eco and renewables in your space. So riff to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I started off in the world of renewables about 13 years ago now.
A long time before anyone thought that was a thing.
Well, a lot of the early instruction manuals came over to Britain in foreign languages, and it was quite interesting early on, and there certainly wasn't anywhere like a university course or degree you could do in anything like that. You know, things were very much gas boilers. People didn't know sort of what a solar panel really was, other than they maybe had it on their calculator, right?
Yeah.
So it was a career choice that I made primarily because I felt that it was an important thing to do, that we were conducting a really stupid experiment of taking out all of the carbon that's embedded in our planet, setting fire of it and pumping it into the atmosphere, which makes no logical sense at all. No one today would think of conducting a nuts experiment like that.
Yeah, and 13 years ago, that's quite a big step to make, right? It's quite forward thinking.
Well, it is. I mean, circumstances often drive behaviour and choices and everything, and I think very much with me that was the case, and I chose from a very different career to that, but with a view to trying to do something that left a net positive impact on the world. You know, it's you've got a finite number of years on this planet, and you may as well try and do some decent kind of legacy. And I felt if I could contribute any way towards that, then that would be a positive thing and give me a bit of satisfaction out of life. You know?
Yeah, you have to be led by your mission at the end of the day. And most people are going through life trying to find theirs, so it's quite cool that you've managed to get behind something as early on as you did.
I don't know. I think it's an ever-evolving thing, actually. Try and do the right thing in life. It's not exactly easy. You've got to try to aim at it and hope. But for me, that seemed to work. It seemed to be something I naturally clicked with, and over the years I've been really quite lucky to first of all be in that so early, and secondly have a chance to try out pretty much every technology that's there, and also sort of fit it as well and get down and dirty with it, not just work in a theoretical paperwork sending bills kind of sense, but actually get the equipment working in real life.
Yeah.
See what it does, cut through the myths of what manufacturers purported to do, and get to a space where I can really help people across the board, both commercially and domestically, do something meaningful to cut their energy consumption. Bills go hand in hand with that.
Yeah.
If you cut your consumption, it's going to be less. That's a fundamental driver for most people. But that of course has knock-on effects to making improvements to our environment around us when you do that.
Yeah.
And it's a space occupied by people with wildly different opinions and wildly different takes on it. And I think that I can bring some kind of semblance to that by sort of offering services to people now that I'm not hands-on per se, to work in a sort of a capacity as a, I suppose, like a financial advisor in the world of low carbon energy.
Because that's something really interesting about. So just for someone's perspective, Mark, you're managing director of Your Future Energy, which does consultancy and basically helps in all things renewables, whether it be commercial or residential. So you play a big part in actually giving a very level-headed perspective on how people can optimise their homes or businesses or anything like that. And one of the things you told me about the other day is about there's big changes coming that not a lot of people are actually aware of, especially on the residential side. And I thought I'd get a little bit of perspective from you about what is actually coming in the world of renewables, how will it affect the daily person really, and what changes do we need to make just to be better and to be in line with the new rules?
Well, I'll give without getting too down and dirty with what's in all of the white papers. What people need to understand the most really is that the world's changing. You know, we've had a lot of changes recently, but this was on the cards way before that, and in legislation way before that. We are moving away from burning fossil fuels.
Yes.
I mean, each bit of technology has a life cycle. You know, we don't drive around in the type of cars we used to drive around in 100 years ago, and gas boilers, which are the primary source of heat and the largest energy consumer, certainly within the home, have been around for 130 years. Which is an awful long time for a piece of technology.
Yeah.
Now, there have been for a number of years alternatives to that, and some of them were pursued much more closely on the continent with people in the world of heat pump technology, specifically to heat homes, because it's such a large contributor to household use. And we're going to be moving away from gas boilers. Legislation changes have occurred this year in terms of planning requirements for percentages of renewable energy, and then by 2025 we're going to have a complete rejig of the building regulations, which are going to kibosh gas boilers entirely by in anything new, and we're moving towards a more punitive structure of encouraging people to do it. For years we've had some quite generous grants where the government said, you know, please can you adopt this technology, and they've helped the industry of renewables grow through offering the grants to the consumers and the businesses. But even with bribery, people don't do it. And I would liken it to somewhat like bringing up a child, and that sometimes you can give them sweets and they'll do the homework, and then sometimes you eventually have to put your foot down and say, right, unless you finish it, you're grounded.
Yeah, and that's what these deadlines are about.
Yeah, you know, we're moving towards ever more punitive measures to encourage people to do it. If you're not doing it already, you will ultimately be strong-armed to do it. It's because it's the right thing. You have a choice. You have a choice whether you continue on when your technology reaches the end of its life cycle, as to whether you continue putting a stinky old oil boiler in, or whether you look at something different to that.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people's pushback to that is, how much does it set me back for the future of the world, really? I mean, a lot of people are like, I don't have the money to be idyllic. But it depends on who these deadlines affect the most, I think is a good question.
Well, I mean, if we're going to get like that, I mean, I'm no eco-warrior, but the deadlines affect us all. We're already in the middle of a silly experiment to burn and release all the carbon out of our planet. So deadlines as far as that goes, well, okay. Yeah,
it doesn't matter, like we should already be doing this anyway.
But you're right, you know, money does play a big factor in it, and there are various public grants and monies and finance and different ways of gaining access to that, and that's really what I do. I mean, I won't go into great detail, so that could be a whole another podcast just on that, and like when you get very bored. But there's ways and means that a lot of people can access the different technologies, and there's help. You know, there's help even for people that are on benefits or state pensions. Things like reduced VAT rates and grants and incentives.
Yeah,
so there's a way of accessing it, and you know, the thing is, those things aren't going to be cheap overnight. If it takes someone a certain amount of time and a certain amount of materials to make a product, and that amount of time and materials is greater than the existing technology, well, of course it's going to cost more. Market forces dictate that.
Yeah.
So I try, and when I'm working with people, I have no interest in selling them a product, which is what makes me different.
Yeah.
So I try and work with them and work with their budgets to try and make the best use of what they actually have got available that's going to make a maximum impact on their on
carbon footprint.
Yeah, carbon footprint. Their energy costs primarily. You know, there are people that want to be green, but a lot of people are driven by bills, and with renewable energy, you can greatly drive down what's going out of the bank every month.
Yeah,
which should be a pretty good incentive for most people.
Absolutely, but that's a kind of long-term play. I think a lot of people were scared of the initial cost, but one thing that interests me is that until I started talking to you, I had no idea about the changes that were coming, or the grants that were there to support people. So do you reckon there's a reason why not enough people know about the actual help available to help move to a more green state and carbon negative state? Or do you think it's just a kind of government faux pas that there's not enough funding behind letting people know that those are actually there?
I think that the government has a lot of things to do.
Yeah.
And I think this is part of their agenda, but maybe it's not central, maybe it doesn't win enough votes. So but who knows? But they do release stuff about it, and they do make signs and signals towards it periodically, but it certainly isn't as front and centre as it should be.
Yeah.
And you can talk until the cows come home about something, but if you want to make a difference in the world, you actually have to do something.
Yeah.
And I think also there's quite a lot of FUD and fear and uncertainty about these things, primarily because there's, for want of a better explanation, a lot of nonsense written on the internet, which people read into, and half the time it could even be people trolling from another company or manufacturer trying to put down a competing product, or someone trying to overly blow the proverbial smoke of their own, and it really, and that can actually lead customers to be very confused and uncertain and nervous because they receive so much conflicting information through different sources. So that's sort of why I've set up doing what I'm doing, is to help them sort of navigate through that and cut the wheat from the chaff somewhat.
Yeah, because you need someone to cut through the noise, and there is a lot of noise when it comes to this stuff online. But I think that hits on a nice point of people becoming more independent when it comes to their push towards renewables and eco. I think that we touched on a point yesterday about how people can be more autonomous with this, quite possibly.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Yeah, and how would you think someone takes their first steps into making their home or business more green, for lack of a better term?
Well, one step that I would start with a somewhat negative point. The one step you don't do is buy a product, an off-the-shelf solution without some.
So don't go out and buy solar panels then?
Well, maybe that's the right thing for you, but make sure you do your research and you understand whether it's applicable to you. You know, if you get some solar panels, great, that's fine. But if you're like you and me, and we're out at work all day when the sun's shining out there and nothing's going on at home, then they're not really doing anything for you locally. They're feeding back into the grid, and that's all well and good. It's contributing towards the country, but it doesn't help you out. You've made a significant investment of maybe £5,000-6,000 to put them on the roof, but yet you're not getting any benefit. And I feel that it's important both to consider the impact for the world, but also you need to consider, whether it's a sensible personal investment for you. You know, if let's say you weren't out at work in the office here all day, and you were working from home, or perhaps you were retired and you were putting the kettle on and putting the microwave on, cooking your spaghetti, doing whatever it is you do, right? And at the time when the sun is shining, and you're getting free electricity from the sun, or certainly a contribution towards it from the panels, that makes a whole lot more sense for you. So, and that's just one renewable product that's out there, and one energy generating products, which there are lots. So it's important to take a great deal of consideration into that and work out whether it is right for you. I mean, you wouldn't go into, say, staking that £5,000 or £6,000 on an unknown share or cryptocurrency or something like that, without actually maybe reading into it first and understanding it. So, or perhaps going to see, someone in one of the local offices that is a trained financial advisor.
Yeah.
And I would say that with products you should take the same amount of care, and certainly in a new and emerging market, take some sensible advice, even if it's not from me.
Yeah. Any proper and impartial advice is good advice. I think taking a step back, I'd love to know I basically want to bust some myths about, because for me, I'm completely out of the eco world, and even using that term isn't the proper term. So, what are some of the actual terminologies around this? So, when you say I'm an eco consultant, like you said a minute ago, that can mean anything, right? So, what are some of the terms you hate most when it comes to this industry?
Well, eco is one, because it's a broadly brushed about term that this is eco and that's eco and the other's eco. I would say personally that most technology is best in this world is probably best defined as low carbon.
Yep.
Low carbon. I mean, there's no carbon-free energy production.
Yeah.
There's, even if it's embedded within the materials that made the object, it's still there. So I prefer to sort of deem myself. Well, I'm not keen to define myself as sort of a low carbon energy advisor, as it were.
Rolls off the tongue.
Yeah. But the thing is it's not just about the energy which you produce or use. It's about the very fabric of the buildings and the behaviours that you conduct within the buildings, because everything's sort of interconnected. It all has a knock-on effect. One thing that affects the other. The right thing for your house or flat or mansion might be to make some material changes about the place that have then a repercussion and a knock-on effect to your energy consumption. And sometimes these can be simple little things, like draft proofing. I mean, the amount of times air moves through a room or a building greatly affects its requirements for heat, so much so that now with modern building regulations, they actually pressure test the buildings. They seal them up, they blow them up with air, and they monitor them for air leakage.
Yeah, it's quite smart thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no point providing loads of low carbon energy and then having it leaking out like a sieve from the buildings that you're in. So fabric is very, very important.
Yeah, because that's an interesting dynamic, because a lot of people, as soon as you think, right, how do I go more carbon neutral, how do I think about the environment, that's why my brain, a minute ago, went straight to solar panels. That's where my brain goes. But something as simple as, are you getting a draft? Keep your energy in. It sounds so simple when you say it, but it also brings on to another point about how a lot of things are like almost interconnected in this world, and there's a lot of I think about the wind, and I think about electricity and how all kind of, but this is very fluffy now.
Right.
But I like it in terms of it's almost like a Chinese thing. It's like it's a cheese, a martial arts thing I'm getting with the eco. I should stop using that word. I'm not winding myself up because I keep using that word, but green and just thinking about the world in general. I like taking a more spiritual view on it. I mean, what are your thoughts on how we should treat the world from a spiritual point of view? Let's take it there.
I think you have an impact on it.
Yeah.
And you have an impact on the people around you and what you do. And you can decide what everything is in your power to what that is. And it's important, I think, to be a net inputter actually into the world. You have a choice. You can be selfish and you can hodl all the resources.
Yeah.
Right. Or you can you can maybe leave something behind, and even if you can't financially invest in renewable energy, it's things that you can do to reduce what impact you leave behind. The depth of your footprints don't need to be as heavy on this world, or maybe you can leave less footprints by carrying someone else if you've got it within you to do that.
Because that's a common misconception, I think, because I think a lot of us go under the impression that as people, like, we don't make any impact to the planet, just ourselves, right? Just us using our phone or something makes no difference when it actually does. I mean, we're breathing out CO2 all the time, so just breathe is that,
and methane from other places. But we have these things, and we can't control that. So really focus on the things that you can change.
Yeah.
You know, very basically that if you can't be bothered to shut the windows and you turn the heating on, you're burning energy for no reason. You're burning energy out of pure laziness.
Yeah.
And if you take the easy path of just putting everything in the same bin, and when you could have possibly recycled it. So maybe just, if you can't do anything else, just if you don't have the financial means, you can just try and do the best that you can with what you've got.
Yeah. And I think that's a nice sentiment to have. But so, what top tip for recycling? The other day we bought a set of bin stickers from Amazon. The other ones you can actually label everything like it's somewhere proper. Yeah. And then now we've got loads of spare ones because all we used was general waste and recycle it. And now I'm like, well, now I need to buy lots of separate bins for these stickers. Just bugging my OCD. So top tip: leverage your OCD.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, buy a bunch of stickers. Now you've got to put them somewhere. But another good point that we talked about yesterday is how much energy is actually lost in transition. And this is something I never thought about before, but let's say when we've got all the power on for everything in this set right now, which, if anyone hasn't noticed, we're in something completely different. Welcome to the Eagle Labs Makerspace, it's great here.
Yeah, nice and bright.
Yeah, lots of light, 3D printers, I love it. But yeah, how much energy is actually lost in transition? So in my head, it's always been electricity comes from the power plant, and it goes to your house, and it goes straight into your device. Whereas there's God knows how much energy is actually leaking out on the way there. So elaborate on that a little bit, I guess.
Well, people use different methodology to work it out. Yeah. So precise figures are not possible, and people will just say, well, I use this method and it says this. But you can average it out and say that at least half of it's lost in transmission. Yeah. So one of the ways that renewable energy helps a lot is that it's micro generation, and that's why people define it. It says on-site generation. So that's either using for example, solar panels to capture one. That's something everybody understands. Yeah. Because they've had everything right from a calculator onwards generally. To a heat pump which will extract energy from the ground or from the air. Yeah. Or possibly a small wind turbine that can be located locally on your property. The journey for that is from the garden or the roof down to your laptop or whatever you're using at the time, right? Yeah. The chances of losses from transmission are greatly reduced when the generation is happening on site. So you have people think, well, it's your light bulb or your cooker, but times two, because it's had to come on a trip from wherever the local generation is happening.
Yeah, surprisingly simple. Less energy travel, less energy lost. Yeah. Simple one.
There's less of a chance for it to fall off.
Yeah. Yeah. Really interesting. That is really interesting. Because there's just so many little nuances that just every time I talk to you and something new comes to light. One of the things I love to dive into is the pluses for businesses to move into the realm of being more carbon negative. I know there's grants and things we touched on, but are there any specific grants or advantages businesses can take advantage of to move into this space? Because there's almost like outside partnerships. So, for instance, brands like Ecology or Ecologi, however you pronounce that, who are partnering with brands to say every time you make a purchase, we'll plant a tree on your behalf. So a lot of companies are doing that now and pairing with them just to say, if we've got a sign up or a purchase, whichever, we'll now plant trees. So they're almost having an external carbon negative effect, but probably not focusing on the internal if they do have office space or anything like that. So what are some of the things businesses can take advantage of when looking at it from that perspective?
Well, I think, first of all, businesses should be conscious of greenwashing and virtue signalling.
Yeah.
So when they're doing this, they should see what they can actually do, and I can think of certain inquiries that I've had that started off as, we want some solar panels, and then I find out when I actually visit the place that they're literally dumping heat down the drain during their manufacturing purposes, and then they've got a boiler heating up another place.
Yeah.
And so they have in their processes within their environment a lot of opportunity to save in process more than they could ever generate. So maybe the right place for them to start is there. In terms of advantages to them, I think that you'll probably know this better than I do, considering you're in the world of marketing. But there's very much, and particularly on the under 30s, that people are very conscious of the environmental credentials of businesses they interact with.
Yeah.
And they look for, a big buzzword for you in your business is authenticity. This is the Authenticity Hour podcast. And the thing is, I think if you're a business, you need to make authentic steps into that world that are believable by your customers. Lots of people plant trees. Are they really planting trees, or is it just a sort of a Ponzi or something like that?
Yeah.
If it's a very marketable thing these days for your business to have authentic green credentials. And actually, if you get up to, thankfully, when you get up to the larger corporate environment, it's actually starting to become a requirement of certain standards in business that you have an environmental plan, and that's a good thing. I'm not a fan of massive arm twisting legislation. It doesn't make much sense. The people need to have a certain degree of choice, but at the very large corporate level, I think it doesn't hurt to have their arms twisted a bit. But I think the overarching thing for me and the biggest benefit to business is to have some genuine green credentials that they can support their products and services with.
Yeah.
And people can confidently buy from that firm, knowing that their product that they receive from that firm has come from a company which has done its absolute best to minimise its impact on the world.
And it should be more of a common occurrence instead of it being a rare thing to actually give a damn about one cause or another, whether it be full-blown authenticity, to be completely honest in anything you do, or if it's in the carbon negative space. So yeah, hopefully more businesses will adopt that, because it's certainly something that's needed, and I think it's definitely a marketing trend I've seen where over the years everyone's focused on AI and automation and everything like that, really taking the soul out of everything to do with branding or marketing like that. But in my opinion, we're moving from the age of automation into the age of authenticity. A lot of it ushered in by TikTok, but I think people are sick of the veil, people are sick of robots, kind of, in a way, in terms of feeling part of like a number. It feels like every day we move more and more into the matrix, which is a weird feeling in itself, but having that brought into lots of different arenas, not just marketing, I think should be really beneficial. And I think a lot of it goes back to that independence thing, and being actually aware of everything that's going on in your home or your business, and going, right, how can I step by step evaluate what's going on here from our carbon footprint. So, and I think that's designing a system that works for you, because just like you said earlier, nothing is set in stone for everyone. You can't just have a blanket approach. So if you had to give like a 1 to 5 in terms of how to decide your own system, bit of an on-the-spot question for you, how do you think that could work? Just so people can go, right, I check this, and then everything is all good from there.
Well, the thing to do is to really start by being true to yourself as to what your requirements are. So, if you're working on designing, say, a heating system, for example, there are British standards about how to do it, and so there is a prescription approach to it. But the reality is that people the way they operate things varies greatly from person to person. I mean, you know me, and you know I have a wife from Africa, right? So of course she feels the cold in a completely different way to that which I do. And if I created a system that was fine for me, it damn well wouldn't be for her. So you should start off with you at the centre of it, and think about the things which you do and the way you live your life, and put that in the middle of it. Not because then you will be able to then live it. If you try to shoehorn your lifestyle into a set of rules about energy, you won't be authentic and true to what you're trying to do. So build it around you. I think is the biggest thing, like the same system design. Yeah,
that's a stereotype that comes along with everything eco and carbon neutral, that you have to sacrifice your current lifestyle to save the planet, and it puts up a lot of people that didn't give a damn in the first place. And
no one ever will, James. You know, at the end of the day, nobody is going to forego the things that they like.
Yeah.
So you have to build it around that, and then you make the things more achievable. If you make diet food taste like, well, words which I won't use on our podcast, people aren't going to eat it. But if you make it tasty and enjoyable and like the food that you like anyway, well, chances are you've not got so much problem sticking to the diet.
Yeah.
So do the measures that you can, but don't put yourself under the pressure to try and do something which is going to take you too far out of your own comfort zone.
Yeah. Putting yourself in the centre.
Yeah,
extremely
absolutely
important. And would you say that formula is pretty much the same from a business point of view and a residential point of view, just for the normal person?
Yeah, well, I think that the built environment's very important for your ability to succeed. I mean, if we think about here, you and I are very lucky to be based in an extremely nice, well-appointed office, which is conducive to doing a good day's work.
Yes.
Now, if you have an office which is always too hot, too cold, too humid, too damp, you know, it affects the mental and physical health of the people who are in that space.
Yes.
And they don't perform as well.
No.
And from a purely capitalistic point of view, they don't sell as much stuff, so they don't make your business as much money.
Yep.
So if you want to get the best out of your staff, give them a good environment to work in, and they will produce more for you. And that, as part of that, they can also have a lot of faith in the company as well. And if they know that the company is trying to do the right thing in terms of energy use and the quality of their environment.
Yep.
So there's a great deal to be gained.
Yeah.
There.
And I love that, because I feel like that's the key difference between being green for virtue signalling purposes and being green for the good of everyone around you and the planet at the same time. By putting everyone's work environment in the centre, going, we're actually probably going to improve on what happened before and try and be better for the planet at the same time. So I really like that.
Yeah, I think any improvements should be multifaceted. They should have a benefit other than just
a single purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's an opportunity when you look at these things to deal with so much more than just energy consumption.
Yeah.
And in terms of what you said earlier about impact,
yeah,
you know, maybe you can and what you leave behind, maybe you can do that at the same time as well.
Interesting. Because another question that popped in my head as well while talking about this is, if you are about to buy a new building, whether it be commercial or residential, let's say if the building's slightly older, is there anything that the normal person can look around for to make sure to kind of evaluate where we are from a eco-friendly point of view, to keep using that word again, or just from a heating or just general thing point of view? Obviously, because a lot of people will look at a boiler and go, yeah, that's a boiler.
Yeah, it's a white box.
Knock
It's
it.
on the wall.
Yeah, it's working.
It makes a whoosh sound if
Yeah.
I press this button. It goes ping.
Yeah, is there anything, obviously, because it's hard without all your years of expertise, but is there any little things that people might miss?
Well, if you're going into a new building or a new environment, it's brilliant. Because when it's full up of all your junk, for want of a better word, it makes it quite hard to implement things.
Yep.
So, first off, you've got the biggest opportunity you have to do something, because you have a blank canvas to start off with. So, considering the sort of environmental changes at that point is one of the absolute best times to do it. And I love those opportunities because they enable to me to have the broadest and easiest scope to achieve what I want to achieve. And really, you need to sort of have an eye to that. You need to look at it as a whole, and say, okay, well, if these things need doing, so it's usually pretty.
So the draft thing we touched on from earlier.
Yes.
If the boiler perhaps is making weird noises, like.
Or if it's towards the end of its life cycle, if it's 20 odd years old, you know, chances are it's going to drop off the planet pretty soon. Or maybe start to look out of it if the pipework's hanging. Maybe it's time to have a look at how the heat gets about the house.
Yeah.
The important thing to understand about particularly renewable heating systems is that they are sum total of their parts.
Yeah.
So the analogy I would use is like a car. So if I take a Ferrari engine, and put this Ferrari engine into a beaten up old jalopy, it's not going to behave like a Ferrari anymore. And for people to connect new modern renewable energy technology without any thought as to what it's connected to, is going to have similar results. So have a think about what other things that you might need to change there, and that's the sort of thing that I can help with is actually how, bringing together the various elements of the design to ensure that they perform like less of a tractor and more of a sports car. Once you assemble them all together. Basic things like lighting. We live in a world now where things like LED lighting is relatively cheap. You can go to Tesco's, thankfully, now and get LED lighting bulbs, and it wasn't always like that. And if there's a chance to take those out, with the equivalent LED to a 100-watt standard room light bulb is only sort of 5-6 watts. So you can save 95% on the lighting energy in that room by swapping over to it. It's big. It's big impact from lots of little things.
So planning out the space big picture is normally a thing. So where's the lighting? Is there a draft? What's going to go in this space, and how can I optimise it? So if you have a blank slate, you're thinking a bit more like in like a game system where you've got to optimise the setup. For the gamers out there, that's probably going to be the best way to approach it almost. Yeah,
for people out there, I mean, you wouldn't go out and get a new gaming setup, go and buy the latest NVIDIA card, and put in a Pentium 2 processor alongside it. It doesn't. It makes no logical sense, and. Yet people are quite happy to do that in their homes quite often. So a much better way to approach the scenario is to optimise the set. We use the game scenario, and we say, okay, well, we're going to put we're going to look at our overall budget that we've got for our gaming system, and we'll get the best equal parts that we can get for it that then assembles this computer.
Yeah.
And that would be that's my preferred route for the house. There's no point me doing, like I said earlier, having one bit of glowing technology while the other bit, can just about run Doom.
Yeah. The original Doom.
Yeah, the OG Doom. So.
Yeah, but that's an interesting way, and I love that analogy. And in that analogy, you then become the PC specialist, because not many people have built their own PC by themselves, and you can tackle it via YouTube. But that's one quest. So it's good that you offer the services that you do.
Well, it's practical guidance in that within a PC it's fairly straightforward. I've built a couple in my time, and you have a case with predetermined slots in, so really it's just a case of making choices of components. A building is not so straightforward.
No.
You've got to get up here, over there, around there. You've got to know whether a pipe can go through there, whether cables can go up there, what you have to do to the roof to be able to get.
Yeah.
You need to know that it's going to be compatibility. There's compatibility there, and all technology is not compatible with all buildings.
No.
And
a lot of
it's
people
like trying to get a SATA lead into a DIN socket, right? It's not going to happen.
There's so many PC references over there.
Absolutely.
But I think that touched on a nice point of, do you think people are getting over-reliant on technology when it comes to renewables and green, purely because they focus on the AI that can calculate the heating of a room, that can do X, Y, and Z, and forget to focus on the fundamentals we touched on earlier?
Yes, I do. I think they think that they can solve every problem with control.
Yeah.
Control is an important aspect of it, right? So being able to accurately control something to your needs really does help actually reduce the amount of energy required. And there is some interesting projects and products which use machine learning, to work out the peak times when you consume. That's great, and it allows it to adapt, to allow for the interaction of technologies, for the systems that are sum total of their parts to pick from what's either the cheapest or maybe in some cases free source, whether it's going to take from the solar panels, whether it's going to take from batteries, whether it's going to take from the mains, because that's the most appropriate thing at that particular time.
Yeah. That's
wonderful. But if you do not get the fundamentals of the envelope of the building right, and the wheels, chassis, and all the other parts of the car, all you're doing with is repeatedly playing with the steering wheel without solving any of the other problems. And that's important for people to understand, is that you can give them all the controls so the cows come home, but if the rest of the product is rotten to the core, it's not going to make a blind bit of difference. So I encourage people to think about control, think about artificial intelligence, but do the basics right first, and then all that will be is an enhancement, right, to what they're doing.
It should be in addition to a strong foundation.
The icing on the cake, as it were.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
One of the things that would be good to ask as well, just to kind of round things off, is in an ideal world, in 10 years, what do normal residential homes look like for you in terms of how they actually take back their energy independence and operate in a way that's going to be cheaper for them and better for the environment? What is the dream?
Well, it's happening at the moment, actually. And that is houses that have a full complement of energy producing and handling equipment that interact with the grid, and quite often are net contributors. So we're no longer, people like decentralised things now.
Yes.
Cryptocurrency is incredibly popular, providing decentralised finance where we're all part of the chain, and it gives us a certain degree of security.
Yes.
We're not reliant on, say, sorry Barclays, but Barclays Bank servers to protect our money. It's distributed out across a network. If micro-generation's done properly, our houses will become part of a distributed energy network, which gives us far more security and the ability to have energy independence and be very standalone as a people and a country, without with greatly reduced environmental impact.
I love that. So the world becomes energy blockchain, essentially.
Yes.
That's awesome. I think that...
And it's infinitely achievable as well. If if the correct application of time, money, and effort, that is something which is a realistic goal now.
Yeah.
Technology the way it is.
And with the people with the early adopter mindset, knowing that they can optimise their home the same way as they can jump on the first probably second wave of blockchain now, I'd say, and everything decentralised. I think that's a really nice way of putting it. It could definitely sway a couple of people around actually making active changes. I really like that, and it's been good to have you on, Mark. So thank you for making the time.
Worries.
It's been great. We've been riffing for God knows how long now, probably about half hour. So, is there anything else you want to tell the people if you've got going on at the moment? Because I know you've got a new website coming, which is nice.
Yeah, I've made quite a lot of changes, and I'm really moving into the world of providing more hands-on advice services, because I feel like I can make more of an impact on the world. In that way, I can guide more projects, and I can be more impactful if I don't have to spread myself so thinly across so much project management. So I'm trying to use this as an opportunity, and I am changing things like the website to help go out and cultivate this energy blockchain.
Yeah, break down the barriers to people that have never seen the world before, and then let them know that it can be as easy as a mindset change of thinking of fundamentals, and then talking to someone like yourself and just taking that next step into probably a long-term monetary benefit and world benefit for them. So nothing but winning. And on that note, it's time to end. Thanks everyone for dropping by.
Cheers, James.
No, anytime. Long handshake, love that. We'll be with these every week unless I have a cancellation. We'll probably be back again next week, and we'll be putting out a ton of clips as usual. Don't worry, we're making a stockpile for those who are waiting, and we will catch you again later. So thank you everyone for dropping by.
Cheers.